All right. And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to episode 73 of the podcast. We're going to talk about problem solving today. This is probably one of the most important elements of the program that we put drivers through. And, we've both been around Landstar for a while. We wanted to make this a little more specific to Landstar. But a lot of what we're going to talk about here will help you in any situation you're in, because it comes down to dealing with people and proper communication, priorities. So we'll kind of go through we'll try to give you some examples of some of the stuff that we go through and how we handle those situations when they come about. So, I would say, based on my experience with being around Landstar drivers and communicating with them in groups, a lot of their frustration comes with canceled loads. So let's start with, what do you do when a load cancels? I think, first of all, you have to understand that there's a lot of stuff that you don't have any control over. And there's a lot of stuff your agent doesn't have any control over. So I had one of my drivers call me the other day, and he gave me a scenario. I don't remember exactly what it was. And he goes, well, how does that happen? And I said, well, buddy, there's about 17 different answers to that question. And most of them are, I don't know. I don't know why a load cancels. Sometimes we'll get a notification from the agent that will say, hey, this load is canceled. The product's not ready. The order was canceled. Something happened on the shipper level. Could have been a scheduling problem. Could have been a product not ready problem. Could have been an input. But a lot of times we're just not going to know. Okay. And so the way we run our trucks, we try to get as many loads on the trucks as we can. We'd love to have them booked up a week in advance. Well, if we've got 5 loads scheduled and one of them in the middle cancels, well, now we have a bunch of decisions to make. If we have good loads beyond that, what are we going to do? Because we've still got those commitments. And if those are good paying loads, we want to keep those loads. So now we've lost the ability to be ahead of the curve, and especially in a market like this. I mean, our problem solving skills have been tested in ways over the last 10 weeks, because it's been just unknown after unknown after unknown. And so one of the main principles that I personally want to get across is, first thing you have to do is you have to take this adversarial approach that you have with agents and customers, and get out of not have the first thing in your mind be that somebody's screwing you over. Sometimes stuff happens out of your control, and how you respond to that is going to decide whether or not you have high blood pressure and a stroke before you turn 50. So let's just start with that. Larry, what is your, when that email or that phone call comes that load's canceled, what's the first thing you're thinking of?
Well, like you said, where is it in the whole grand scheme of things? How much notice do we have? My first instinct is, okay, is this going to be just an effect today, or is this going to affect, multiple days? But the first thing you got to get over is you got to get over feeling sorry for yourself, because you can spend all of your energy being mad at the agent or the customer or whatever the cause was for it to cancel. And you can expend a lot of your energy, being angry. Or you can understand that if the shoe were on the other foot and you broke down with a load and you're calling the agent, he feels the exact same way. Things happen beyond our control. things happen beyond their control. Just because a load cancels doesn't mean the shipper is screwing you, particularly the agent is screwing you. So the first thing to do is get over the anger. It makes me angry, but I can't dwell on that. I have to go ahead and start working on the resolution, not spending a lot of time and emotional, time and effort on why did it happen, but how are we going to get out of it? And of course, so we have to start thinking about all the options. What are the options? And the thing that has the biggest effect on that is how much time do we have before this becomes a problem? If we get a notice that a load cancels tomorrow, that's a whole lot different reaction on my part than if we're backed up to the dock and the load cancels. Those are two entirely different scenarios. Or the best scenario is, well, we book load several days out, like you mentioned, and let's say a load 3 days from now cancels. So all three of those would take a different set of problem solving skills to resolve. But let's take the worst case scenario. Let's say that we're on the way and the agent calls and goes, whoa, the product's not ready. We're not going to be able to move today. So then you've got to immediately look at the schedule and see, okay, where is this load taking us? How far away is it? And the first thing I do is go straight to the load board and put in the origin that we're at right now and where we need to be tomorrow whenever this load delivered, and see if there's a way to fill it. At that point in time, I'm not really all that concerned about rate. I'm just trying to determine if there even is a load available, because what are our options here? We either have to replace this load at whatever cost and keep the rest of the tour intact, or we have to cancel the whole tour and start from here, now looking for replacement loads at a certain rate. So that's the first decision that you have to make, is this going to cancel the rest of my scheduled tour, or can I fill in here and keep on going? So then I look down and see what the loads are that we've got coming up and how good, especially right now. Now the tactic that we're taking today, we probably would not have taken it exactly this way 2 months ago, and hopefully won't be doing it 2 months from now. But right now, as scarce as loads are, I hate to give up a load that we've booked out tomorrow or the next day, because replacing that load is not, the closer it is to the day you need the load, the more competition there is for the load, because most people at Landstar don't do what we do and book out. So if we're looking for, if we deliver today and want to load for tomorrow, we have 9,000 other guys doing the exact same thing. Okay. If we work the way we do, we have, when I'm booking a load for next week, I don't have a lot of competition for that load, because most people aren't looking that far ahead, So, so that's the first decision, is that, are we going to replace it? And the worst case scenario is, and we've done this, this, is what's it going to cost to deadhead and keep the tour alive? We had that come up not too long ago, where we could not replace a load, but the loads we had coming up we did not want to cancel them for several reasons. The rate was good, and we have relationships with agents that we don't want to call them and say, oh, we're coming off your load because the load we have today canceled, So I know we're getting to a bigger picture here, but all this has to do with relationship building as well, So as mad as you were that the agent called and canceled on you, now you're going to turn around and do the same thing to other agents that you've got booked because somebody was mean to you. So I'm going to be mean to them, So we don't want to do that. So we have three options, we deadhead, we find a replacement load at whatever rate it is, or we cancel everything and start all over from here. So it's a decision you have to make.
One of the things that I have been in the situation a few times, a handful of times, where I've broke down, right? And so now I do not have an operating truck, and I have to call the agent and I have to say, hey, I'm broke down. I mean, they can be mad if they want to, but it doesn't, them being angry does not fix my truck.
Change anything.
Right. Yeah. So I think your average BCO or just truck driver in general would say, well, listen, when I call you and I have a legitimate problem and I can't haul this load, You can't hold that against me. I've done everything I can to meet the commitment, but my truck quit. Well, the equivalent to that is the customer not having the product ready.
Right.
And one of the biggest mistakes that I see people in the trucking business, and I've seen this from company drivers, and I've seen it from lease operators and owner operators and independents and everybody, is that you want to kill the messenger. You want to go after the agent or the broker, but you're not considering the needs of the customer. The customer is the customer, and their customers are the only reason there was a load in the first place. So whether they did it maliciously, whether they screwed up somehow, whether they made a mistake, whether somebody called them and said, well, we don't need this product anymore, or we don't need this product till next week. Well, their needs are what matters. That's the only person in the whole chain that really matters. And so when you get that phone call or that email that your load is canceled, you have got to stop going from 0 to 10. And 10 is somebody's being malicious, somebody found a better rate, somebody did this to screw me over. You've got to stop thinking that way, because I would guess that probably 9 times out of 10 or more, there's a legitimate reason that load canceled. So,
and if it's a broker load, you even got, it's even more out of our control. If it's a direct customer, that's one thing. If it's a broker load, we really sometimes don't even know why they cancel. I mean, there could be some shenanigans going on there. They could have found a cheaper truck. It doesn't really matter. The bottom line is you're not going to pull the load. So how are you going to get over it? That's what we're talking about here. All the reasons don't matter. It doesn't really matter to you why the load cancels. What matters to you is how are you going to react to it? How are you going to respond to it? And this is problem solving 101. To take loads out of it. Something bad happens to you. How do you react? Do you pout? Do you get angry and want to burn somebody's house down, or do you do what you need to do to recover from this and do the best for you? And that's the same thing here. You got to get over the emotion part of it. It doesn't really matter why it happened or who did it, or that doesn't matter. It doesn't change anything. What happens now is, are you going to sit there and lose a day pouting over it? I'm not going to move because this load paid $3 a mile and I can't find anything except pay $1.50 a mile. Or are you going to recover from it, and be smart, not, angry? And that's, I guess, the lesson we're trying to teach here is that, your recovery is all on you. It's your effort, and your recovery will be a lot more successful if you go at this with the right attitude. You can fix everything with attitude, and you can control attitude. That's the one thing that you can control, is you can forget about why and go, okay, here's what we got to do. And you and I do it. We get, we're with a fleet, we're a phone call away from this process 24 hours a day. People, my friends, they don't understand my business. They well, you're home all the time. Well, yeah, I'm home all the time, but it's Monday and I could get a call. It's a holiday right now. I could get a call tomorrow in the next 10 minutes, would change everything. And those problem solving skills you're talking about have to immediately go into play. Even though I'm at a cookout or whatever it is, I've got to stop. I could be sitting there winding down, and one of my drivers give me a call. I'm dead in the water, and everything changes. You got to drop what you're doing, and that's the thing that I have to do as a fleet owner now. As a one truck, one driver situation, it's not quite that fragile, but the point is the resolution is the same. How do you go about resolving it? And I can tell you right now, the quicker you get over the anger of it, the better your resolution process will be. Now that's easy said and not always easy to do, because we all have emotions. I mean, you've got the perfect week going, okay, and then your first load cancels. Now my perfect week now has gone to hell. But look, that's part of being in business. We teach all of our drivers here that come over. We don't hire drivers to come here and have a driving job. we hire drivers to come here and learn how to become businessmen. And there's two things I talk about at orientation. And one of them is changing your identity from an employee to a self-employed person, and developing the problem solving skills so that you can react to these things that are going to happen and turn a negative into a positive. Those are the two primary things we talk about from day one. And the reason we talk about it is because it's not easy to do. And a lot of people don't naturally have those abilities. Those can be learned skill sets. But we've identified early on that is the key to success here. Not here, but at Landstar certainly, and in trucking in general, is the ability to conquer those two issues. And that's why we talk about them from day one.
So let's shift from a canceled load to a load with problems. We've had, I'll use two experiences we've had recently. I booked a load. I have a dedicated run every week that runs Tuesday to Friday. And so I will get a load that I can do on Monday and Tuesday morning to fill in the gap. And there's one load a week that I have to just find something to fill in that gap. There's occasions that I don't find anything. But I found a load. It was 130 mile deadhead. I got over there for my appointment, and 8 hours later, I'm still sitting in a dock waiting to get loaded. Now I've got to still deliver this load if I ever get loaded, and I've got to make it to my dedicated direct Landstar customer load. And so we started talking about it, and I tried checking in with shipping, and this was about 2 weeks into the pandemic. Yeah. And I could not get any information that gave me any confidence whatsoever that I was going to get loaded ever. So I called the agent, and I said, it's 10 o'clock at night. Here's the situation. I've been here 8 hours. This ain't working. And they proposed. They said, well, if you want to leave, let me know. All right. So there I have some indication from them that they're like okay with that. So Larry and I had a conversation about it. We called Landstar customer service. We had a conversation with them about it. Wasn't very productive, but we had a conversation. We at least got it documented. We called the agent again, and we said, all right, we're done. And I went in and I formed the shipping office. I said, look, I'm leaving. We're not staying here to get this load. And I pulled out of the dock, closed my doors, and left. Now, we left that money on the table, and we turned in a truck order not used, but I don't know if anything's ever going to come out of it. We've done all we could do. We showed up for the load. We were there when we were supposed to be. We did everything right. But this shipper, it was some kind of food place. The whole place was just, from the minute I pulled through the gate, I just knew I was walking into a disaster area. And we bolted. And I had to eat 130 mile deadhead over there. And then I had to eat about almost 400 miles deadhead. So not only did we lose all the time, we lost about 600 miles worth of fuel. But we could not give up and jeopardize a relationship that I've had for 6 years. We had another one where a driver was supposed to go and get all this PPE, protective equipment. And so he does exactly what he's supposed to do. He gets there when he's supposed to be there. And they said, oh, you don't have enough. You got to go buy steel-toed shoes, and you got to buy this, and you got to buy that. So he goes and spends, what, $200, $250? Goes back to the shipper, does everything he's supposed to do, and then they said, oh, well, we don't load after 2 o'clock. You got to come back tomorrow. And we said, all right, no, we're done here. And we called the agent, and we left.
I called the agent several things.
Right. Well, here's the thing. That is never option one. This is always, if you're ever going to do that, this got to be like option 10. You have got to have extinguished and exhausted every other possible thing that you can do before you're ever going to bail on the load, because you don't do that. You essentially signed a contract when you got that rate confirmation. You're going to pull that load no matter what. And, and I've been in situations before where Landstar corporate has said, look, the only load that matters is the one on your trailer. That's your immediate foremost commitment is the load on your trailer, right? So if you have another load booked and your trailer doesn't get empty, that's what you're stuck with. Fortunately, that doesn't happen very much.
Now the haters are going to jump on that driver for not having the PPE equipment already. But here's
let's talk about that.
We took that load and we knew that he had to have a certain type of PPE suit, okay?
Right.
For this load specifically. We knew that up front. We were told where to get it. We were there an hour early to get the equipment exactly that was on the rate con. Had we known that he had to have all this other stuff, we would have had time to have prepared for that. But we didn't know that. And there were some things that most people, well, I don't say most people, but this guy's fairly new to Landstar, fairly new to hazmat. And so there's some things that he did not have. And so,
well, and most of the stuff on that list, pre-pandemic, they would have handed him.
Yeah.
Hard hat. I've gone into, there's a plant up here 50 miles from my house. And when you go in there, they hand you a respirator. They hand you a hard hat. They hand you whatever you need. But because of this pandemic nonsense, they won't, that was what escalated this to a whole other level, because now instead of having stuff that they'll loan you, now you've got to go get it, And I'm going to tell you, I don't carry steel toe boots in my truck. I've got hard sole, I've got tennis shoes or leather shoes that I wear all the time, but I don't run flatbed. When I ran flatbed, I always wore steel toes, but I don't have steel toes in the truck with me. And most people will say you have to have steel toed boots in the production area. Well, we're never in the production area. And so, that's why I stopped carrying steel toe shoes with me, because I never needed them. Right. So in this case, the rate confirmation came with, you need to have this and this and this and this.
No, it came with one thing. You have
that's right. You're right.
Suit. Okay. And we
this suit.
Got that suit, and we're still an hour early to the load. And when he gets there, the security guard goes, no. Here's all the things you have to have. Hard hat, respirator, steel-toed shoes, and various other things. So fine. He calls me. I said, well, look, go get it. So we turn around and go right back to the place down the road to get all that stuff, okay? We get everything. We get back, and there's a certain type of respirator that they don't sell there that we had to go get somewhere else, okay? So we get all of that, and now when we get there, it's after 1:30, and they quit loading at 1:30. So now after not knowing that we had to have all this stuff and spending 2.5 hours getting it up, now we can't get loaded. Again, it's not that having this stuff was the problem. Not knowing that we were going to have it was the problem, and not having time to prepare for that, because we did exactly what the rate con said to do. Exactly. So that's when we made the decision. Well, wait a minute. We can't sit here and load this load tomorrow because we've got the rest of this guy's tour already planned out. So that's when I told the agent, I said, look, here's the problem. You didn't tell us about this stuff. We didn't have the stuff. By the time we got the stuff, we can't get loaded. Guess what? We're not pulling the load. I called Landstar corporate. I talked to them about it. They understood. Matter of fact, they called the agent. This was a sub-agent I was dealing with. They called the primary agent and got his, he got on board with this as well. So no problem, we'll take you off the load. So, it was resolved, but we wasted a lot of time. We lost that load, and we ended up having a deadhead up to our second load. There again, all that could have been avoided had we had a complete and thorough dispatch, which is Landstar's policy
Right.
for agents to follow, that this particular agent did not follow. So we can get mad and pout about it, or we can just move on, which we did. We moved on. Driver ended up still having a great week. We lost one day. We made up for it with all the other loads that we already had booked on the truck. That were great loads. So, but there again, we had to be decisive. We had to decide what we were going to do. We had to do it in a way that was professional, and also had to, make sure that we covered all our bases and communicate with everybody so that everybody was on the same page. When it was all said and done, it was fine. They understood. They said, we don't, I guess they may not have known at the time, although the agent did send me an email after the fact with all these requirements on it, that we didn't get prior to the fact. So,
yeah.
Anyway.
That, again, I want to say that, this is not option one. That we have a protocol of a lot of communication, and we've modified our operation over the last year. That, like, for example, we now have individual email accounts for all the trucks, and that way that just makes it so much easier to know who's talking to who. Because I was telling one of the drivers was asking me the other day, well, how do you communicate with the agents? I said, often. Well, what should I say? Tell them when you got there. Tell them when you got loaded. Tell them when you leave. Tell them when you get there. Tell them when you're empty. I mean, it's very simple communication, but agents have told me over time that one of their biggest frustrations with BCOs is they won't communicate. They won't answer the phone. They won't return emails. They won't give in and out times. They won't tell them the trailer numbers. And they're constantly having to chase people in order to get the information that they need to pass along to their customer. And their customer could be a broker. We have got to stop this prejudice against third-party loads that somehow they don't count. They pay the same as direct customer loads. They pay you to haul those loads. And so you deserve them the basic respect to the agent and to the broker and to the customer that you do if there's no broker. It's just an agent and a customer. But we've got too many people that they want to look down their nose at a third-party load because it's not direct to a Landstar agent, and then, try to treat them differently. Well, guys, that's how we've ended up in a situation where we'll call to get a load, and we'll get a response back that says they won't load a Landstar truck. There's a reason for that. And with 1,400 agents and 10,000 BCOs, I can guarantee you it's not 100% the agent's fault that there are brokers that won't load Landstar trucks.
Right.
Sure. So breakdowns. Let's talk about breakdowns, because with 5 trucks, we have more opportunities for there to be a breakdown. This one, I think, could be broken into a couple of different categories. One, preventing the breakdown in the first place, which is, instead of running from your 120, you need to embrace your 120. Do not start looking around and throwing darts at a map when it's 120 time. Where do I get my 120 done? You need to have somebody that you have created a relationship with over time to do that 120 every single time. It's every 4 months. So you need to have somebody that you can go to every 4 months that's familiar with you and familiar with your truck, that will get under there and give you good information that will help you maintain your truck, because you need to have them help you find the stuff, not that's going to fail your 120 today, that's going to fail your next or the one after or the one after. Fortunately, we have one of those, and every time. I mean, I had what was it? I had one of the drivers come through for something little tiny, and of course he crawls under there, and every time he crawls in, hey, you gotta look this, oh, gotta look that, oh, what, this here loose. And your truck's maintenance is an everyday process. You need to be looking at it every day, but you're not a mechanic. You're not going to see things that they're going to see. And so it makes a lot of sense to have a relationship with someone that is a Landstar inspector. That way they know what to look for, but can also help you find other things that are going to create problems down the road. So that's the first part of dealing with problem solving when it comes to breakdown. Prevent the breakdowns. I had a guy working on my truck yesterday. Okay. Same guy. And, you know, Larry made that joke about dead in the water. That was me on Friday, sitting on the side of the road, trying to figure out why my truck just shut off. And my truck shut off about 6 times in 2 hours. And I ended up on the shoulder 3 times. And I kept wiggling and touching wires until I got something to work. And so yesterday he came over and looked at the truck. All right. Out of 4 batteries, I had 3 different loose connections. The wire that runs from the battery box to the ECM, when he touched the little wire, it broke. The magnetic switch on the firewall was dirty. And one of the lugs in the fuse box on the Freightliners, there's 4 lugs on the side of the power distribution model. One of those was loose. Okay. He methodically went through there and checked everything and found these loose, whether they were left loose or they worked loose, but that stuff's going to happen. And so, you know, fortunately I was in a position that I could tinker around, and I managed to get it running. But this is also the same guy, if you go back and listen to podcasts from before, that probably saved us $15,000 by replacing a $25 ignition switch that nobody else on planet Earth would have found but him. So preventative maintenance is absolutely essential to prevent you from being in the position where you have to call a customer and say, hey, I'm not going to make it, my truck's broke down. Because statistically speaking, catastrophic failures are rare. They really are. There's a lot of little nickel and dime crap that will shut your truck down that's not sending a rod through the motor or breaking a transmission or breaking rear end. There's a lot of little stuff that will screw you up, and you need to have a good, solid relationship with a great mechanic that will get under your truck once a week or every other week and help find those little things. Okay, so now you broke down. Well, the first call after if you're on the side of the road, obviously, after you've got your triangles out, because you don't want to be sitting duck, you got to call that agent and let them know, hey, I'm broke down. Then you've got to either fix it yourself, which I carry enough tools that I can fix almost anything except big stuff. But then what do you do when you're sitting there and you've got to find somebody? Well, fortunately, we've got Google, we've got apps, you got all this different stuff, and you got to find somebody that's going to come. And I remember when I bought my truck and I was no longer, leasing, where even when I was a lease truck operator, I had a maintenance department, and I blew a hose on the intake. And I'm on the side of the road, and I pulled my phone out, and I started to call TA. And then I went, oh, God, what are you doing? That'll cost $300 just for them to get in the truck and drive up here. And I looked in the side box, and I got a roll of duct tape, and I duct taped it back together enough to get to the truck stop. But, having an Uber and Lyft account so that if you did blow a hose, well, you can go find the part, and you can have an Uber or Lyft bring it to you on the side of the road, and you can put it back on yourself and fill it up with coolant or whatever you got to do. But you've got to get more familiar with the maintenance of your truck so you can do little stuff like that. But once that happens, you have got to give that agent the courtesy of a call at the very instant that you have broken down, because now they have a lot of people they've got to notify, and they've got to get a truck under that load. Now, if you're under a load, then we've got to start talking about, are they going to have to repower it? Can you get fixed fast enough to stay under the load? And listen, if you've never, and I didn't have to deal with a repower gosh, till I think I'd been at Landstar 2 years, repowers do not go in your favor. I think you ought to talk a little bit about repowers, Larry, and let people really know what that process is like, and the pitfalls, because you can really get hosed on repower.
Well, that's probably the last thing you want. You want to try to do everything you can not to repower. That, I'll tell you that, because here's the thing. At that point in time, their problem solving technique is to pay whatever it takes to get this load delivered. So now they've got to entice another BCO. And I don't need to tell you how you entice BCOs, but it's not with, doing me a favor. It's with how much are you going to give me? So it becomes a bidding contest, basically. It becomes what's called an SOS load, and they'll post it on the board, and they'll just keep raising the price until somebody takes it. And that price is paid by what the load paid to begin with. And most of the time, or at least a good part of the time, that exceeds what you would have made on the load. So you end up doing your part for free, is what it boils down to. If you give the load up, and unless you're in a really, really unusual situation where you're only a few miles from delivery and somebody happens to be living there and wants to help out a guy, you're going to end up doing whatever you did on the load for free, and because they'll pay whatever they have to pay to get the load covered, and then
does
whatever
the BCO have to pay does the BCO have to pay the difference, or does Landstar do that?
No, it won't cost the BCO, but it costs the BCO in the fact that let's just say the load paid $1,000, okay, and you get halfway through the load and you break down, and so now they have to repower. Well, they start the load out on the load board for, let's say, 500. Nobody hits it. So they raise it to 750. Nobody hits it. They raise it to 1,000 before they finally get somebody that is willing to do it for that. Well, the customer's just paying 1,000. Okay. So now BCO who broke down is at zero, and repower BCO is at full price, And sometimes even Landstar will kick in money to get it covered if that's what it requires. Now that's on a one-on-one basis, or a what's the phrase,
case by case
basis, but I have seen where the corporate will put, especially if it's like an automotive load or a big national account or whatever, they'll actually kick in money and to get the load moved. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you repower a load, you're not going to make any money. You've lost everything that you've done on that load at that point in time. To the point where we actually have repowered our own loads. You don't have to give the load up. You can get it repowered yourself if you can do that. And we have done that more than once, where we'll call people that we know and just say, hey, finish this off for us, help us out here. And then we pay them directly. And, and Landstar doesn't care as long as the load gets delivered. The agent usually doesn't care as long as the load gets delivered. So we just paid the other BCO with a com check, and they weren't in the settlement flow at all. We just paid them outright. And that way you still got the control. You repower it or put it or give it back to Landstar as an SOS load. You're completely out of control there. You can't help with the decision-making process whatsoever, But if you stay under the load stays assigned to your truck, and you find another BCO that will help you out and deliver it for you, you pay him, then, you're still maintaining control of that transaction. And if you're finding somebody that you have a relationship with, that the load's going to get delivered. And in our case, it wasn't even late,
right.
It was delivered and still delivered on time, So sometimes, with having a fleet, sometimes we can actually repower our own loads with our own trucks. But sometimes we have relationships with other BCOs that we can call on, and there's we scratch each other's back situation where we help each other out.
So the only one I can think of we really had to do that was the wreck, right? I think so.
Yeah, in October when we had a driver have an accident with a trailer. Well, that was a situation too where the trailer was damaged, so it had to be cross docked and reloaded onto another trailer. And that was a whole different
Yeah.
set of problems. But
Yeah, we need to do a separate video so that people know what all happens. You know, what are the after effects of of having a wreck and you know, losing a truck, losing a trailer, losing a load, losing a driver. You know, there's lots of rolling consequences that come in after you have a wreck. So
yeah, it doesn't end there because there's a lot of deductible. If you really look at your lease contract, there's a lot of deductibles that you're responsible for. The trailer, the contents. If another party's involved, there's several different deductibles there that you're responsible for, and so it's if you the first time you go through this, it's quite a learning experience, you know, that you weren't expecting. So just to give you just a thumbnail of it, there's a $1,000 deductible, and then two $2,000 deductibles. Now I don't remember which one's which, but the three categories are trailer, contents, and an injured third party or another vehicle involved with that was damaged. So those three different claims together, it's $5,000 worth of deductible that you're responsible for. So, and there's no insurance that you can get to cover that.
yeah, that'd be handy. Okay, so we've talked canceled loads, we've talked canceling loads, maintenance on the truck. Maybe for some new people, we should just talk a little bit about picking loads, about going through the process of generating revenue. You know, we've talked about that in other podcasts, but I think it would be good for some people to hear how we look at putting a week's worth of revenue together. So,
okay. Pre-pandemic or post-pandemic?
Well, you know,
or during the pandemic.
Well, I think our model has been proven, you know,
Yeah,
through this because, because I mean, you could look right now and see how many loads we have done in, say, the last 8 weeks that did not meet our minimum criteria. And what is it? 15-20% maybe?
No more than that. Yeah, no more than that. I mean, there's some loads that we do every week that we know are not going to meet criteria because they're filler loads. So if you don't count those, it's probably less than that. You know, you do 1 or 2 loads every week that would not meet criteria, except for the fact that your primary load covers that week's minimums. These loads are just fillers, you know. So if you take those out, then it's even less than that, you know. And then, like you say, we had a couple situations where we intentionally, did not take a load, or we had a problem we had to fill in. But yeah, it hasn't really. I mean, the time it takes for me to find the loads and book them has gone up incredibly an incredible amount because of this, because they're harder to find. But we're finding the loads, especially if we're not having to find loads for today or tomorrow. If we're looking for loads that are 3 or 4 or 5 days out, not really having a big problem finding those. The problem we're having is if something comes up and we have to find a load today or find a load late today for tomorrow. That's where we end up having to sometimes take a load that would not meet what we consider our minimum criteria, just to keep moving or to fill in, to bridge a gap, you know, a problem.
So our minimum criteria is we start about $2 a mile and $1,250 a day.
Right.
Now, in the middle of 2018,
and the ability to drive it in one shift, so 600 miles or so, you know.
Yeah. And so, in 2018, I was dispatching myself. I set my minimum at $3 and $1,500 a day. And now, to contrast that, we're setting it at $1,000 and about $1.70, $1.60,
Right.
just to make sure that we're getting anything and everything that will be covered. But the median of that is $12.50 a day, $2 a mile. Be able to pick it up today, be rid of it tomorrow, get another load. And so each truck should do 5 loads a week at $1,200 a day, $2 a mile. If we do that, the driver gets paid, we get paid, everybody's happy. That's our happy spot. Anything above that is gravy.
Right.
And I stumbled upon that myself the last quarter that I owned my truck, and had the best quarter that I ever had the whole time I owned my truck by searching for loads that day, which meant if a load took 2 days, it had to pay $2,500. And if it took 3 days, it had to pay $3,750. So, we'll occasionally find some 2-day transits that will get in the $2,100 to $2,200 range, but you're talking about 800 miles, 900 miles to do that. And so it's a good paying load, and it stretches over that time. But what was our big truck last week? 7,300, 7,500, I think.
It wasn't 75. It was
I think it was 73 or
73, I believe. Yeah.
So that's one guy in the current market conditions in May of 2020 that booked himself a $7,300 week gross revenue.
No, I was wrong. 750880.
Okay. I mean, I guarantee you there's somebody's going to see this right now and will say, well, that's not possible. Well, it was, because he did it, $7,500 in 7 days. That includes the holiday weekend, right?
It delivers Tuesday morning, yes, but he's been home since Saturday.
So. Right. So yeah, home for a long weekend, and $7,500, and at that, without the pandemic pay, he's still looking at making $1,800 plus the pandemic pay.
$1,770 plus the pandemic, and he did 5 loads. It's $250. So it'll be $2,000, over $2,000.
Yeah, that's a company driver on a W-2 that doesn't own the truck in May of 2020 in a pandemic, making $2,000. And I guarantee you there are some BCOs right now that are running that aren't making $2,000 a week, and we got a company driver that just did.
And he's been with us since October of last year, so he's been here less than 6 months.
Yeah, and started dispatching himself in January. Yeah. And he's our rock star. The customers and agents love him. He communicates well. He asks all the right questions. He's just an absolute model of what it takes to be successful here. And when he becomes a BCO, y'all better get ready, because he's going to be taking just wheelbarrowfuls of cash to the bank.
Well, and the best thing about him is his attitude. He has a great attitude, and that's what allows this to happen right here. That's why he's a great learner. He listens. He's he's an excellent communicator, and he's very respectful, and so a lot of this stuff now, he's developed his own relationships with his own agents. Some of these loads are relationships he's developed, so because some of these loads weren't even on the board. So
yeah, and that's more than half the battle here at Landstar, is building those relationships so that the agent calls you, or you're going to be in an area, that customer has freight, and we're looking out a week or so in advance, so we can call an agent. Hey, do you have one of those out of there? Oh yeah, I do. All right, well, put me on it. And so now I can, if I know I've got a driver going a certain place, we'll call ABC over there and see if they have a load out of that shipper. And man, we've booked some some fantastic loads over the last 10 weeks just because we knew who had freight. And then when you get in a situation like this, where you know who has direct customer freight that's contract, by the way, and not affected by the market, you can start dispatching and routing yourself in around those customers. And, you know, you've seen a few of the superstars show up in the Facebook groups of talking about, you know, what they were able to book. And I guarantee you there's been guys that probably have had a 2018 experience during this pandemic, you know, because they knew who to call and who had freight, and they're out here making just killer money.
And by the way, all of our trucks are dry van or company vans, so we don't have any flatbed stuff. All this is dry van rate stuff. So
yeah. I know there's something else. Detention. This is one that gets everybody fired up. Why don't you offer your best practices for detention? Because some of our drivers need to hear this.
Well, you know, I want drivers to understand that detention is not something that's guaranteed. You know, we won't know if we're really going to get it until we get it. But here's the thing: if we don't try, we're never going to get it. And my experience with Landstar is that about half the time, if we document it and go through the procedures properly, and especially if we're dealing with an agent that we have got a relationship with, which, you know, we have a lot of those, and they go to bat for us, that we can get it probably more than 50% of the time. So because of that, you know, I try to get our guys to understand that, look, if you're there 2 hours and they haven't touched your trailer yet, you know you're going to be there long enough that we could probably apply for detention. So start the process then and there. Notify the agent, document your times, you know, get everything that the agent wants to go to bat for you and get the process started. Okay. Now, if they get you unloaded in 15 minutes and you're out of there, well, just forget about it. Okay. But if they're like you, where you were there for 8 hours or something, and oh, by the way, that freight bill is still active in the system. So there is some, you know, the customer has been billed, you know, now whether or not we get anything for it, you know, we can't control that, but the agent did. And you can always, by the way, you can tell if your detention or your truck order not used or any of your accessorials that you're applying for after the fact. The way you know if those are really in process is the freight bill will still be alive on your online. You know, your loads in process. If that freight bill is still there, it's waiting for the customer to pay. So, you know, and I just get my drivers to start the process, and then I have a way that I flag it, and I just keep following up with it about every couple of weeks. I'll call the agent and say, how are we doing on this? You know, what's the latest? And they know that I'm not going to forget about it and let it just, you know, just die with age. So they tend to not, you know, bullshit me about, oh yeah, we've put in for it, because I can tell if they have or not. And, you know, I had a driver get paid $1,100, his part on a couple of truck order not used from back in February, March, just a couple weeks ago. So it takes time, but it's certainly worth it. I mean, no more trouble than it is to do a little paperwork and to follow up. I mean, over the course of a year, that can make a big difference in how much money you make if you take the trouble to do it. Now, a lot of guys just think, well, I'm not going to get it, so I'm not going to go through all the trouble. But it's really not that much trouble. It's just documentation, and then, you know, follow up. That's really all there is to it. And again, just like the problem solving we talked about, you can't get all, you know, pouty when you don't get it, because here's the thing: the agent can bill it, Landstar can bill it, but ultimately the customer has to agree to pay for it. And if they won't pay for it, there's nothing we can do, especially if it's a customer that Landstar doesn't want to lose over a $60 detention thing. So, you know, it's out of your control, but your part is you can control the fact that you can start the process. And then and then the other thing is develop a system where you follow up, because applying for it's one thing, but staying on top of it, calling, making sure that that squeaky wheel gets the grease syndrome is working in your favor. And I've been pretty successful over the years getting detention. It's not been the problem is trying to get it where we didn't start the process and we don't have the agents on our side because we didn't follow the procedures that, especially if it's a third party load. When you're dealing with brokers, you have to play by their rules, and so a lot of those rate cons have exact procedures for what you got to do for detention or whatever like that. And if you don't do that, they're just not going to do it because you didn't follow the rules to begin with. So that's what the driver has to do, is make sure he follows the rules that the rate con sets forth. And then after that, I take the ball over there and run it because I'll stay on top of it. And but if you don't, again, you're never going to get it if you don't play. It's like the lottery. You can't win if you don't play. Okay, so if you don't at least apply for it or try to get it, you're never going to get it. And even when you do, you're only going to get it probably half the time. But still, as many loads as we do in a year, it's worth me to do it. It's worth me taking the trouble to do it. I guarantee you that our driver that got $1,100 in the past couple of weeks is glad we did it. So.
How much were those tolls altogether that we chased for a year?
$1,700.
But that comes back to that documentation.
Yep.
We documented and submitted and documented and submitted and documented and submitted, but we've now created a pretty handy online cloud or archive system that we keep all the freight bills, everything for the trucks. And so if somebody has some sort of question about a freight bill, we can go pull up that exact freight bill because we keep a digital copy of everything. But if you don't have that archive and you don't have that ability to document as you're doing it, because again, you are a business owner, you are not a driver anymore. And I was talking with one of our new drivers. I mean, we hired 2 brand new drivers right when the hammer fell on this pandemic.
March 30th.
Yeah, it was earlier than that, wasn't it?
No, because it was the weekend of the truck show was going to be.
Right. Yeah. So the end of March, we hired 2 brand new drivers right in the middle of all this. And I was talking to one of the new ones the other day, and he's like, "I never would have believed how hard this was," And I'm like, "Yeah, imagine having a $2,000 truck payment to go with it." And he was like, "I couldn't do it. There's no way," because you have to change so much of your mindset. I had a conversation with my 13-year-old daughter this morning. They have some chores they have to do, and they have an A list and a B list, and they switch every week. And they do about half of what they're supposed to. And so when I got up this morning, I went into the kitchen that was full of dirty dishes. And so I did a bunch of dishes, and I said, "Who's dish duty?" And she was like, "Oh, my brother." And I said, "No, that starts today. Whose duty was it yesterday?" She said, "Mine." I said, "Who did your job this morning?" She said, "You did." And I said, I explained to her, I said, "Look, I have authority over you because I'm responsible for you. You don't have your own income. You can't go out and take care of yourself. I'm responsible for you. Therefore, I have authority over you. And so I can tell you what to do." And I told her that it's time, she'll be 14 here in a few weeks. It's time for you to start taking responsibility for taking your responsibilities more seriously, that you need to start doing the things on that list without being told to do them, without me chasing you around. And I said, what we teach our drivers is that when we give you a week's worth of assignments, you have to start at the end and work your way backwards. Because we've had a few situations with drivers that aren't here anymore, where we would give them a week's worth of loads on a Friday, and the following Wednesday they call, "Hey, I'm not going to be able to deliver this load." And I'm like, "Well, why not? You've had all that information since last Friday." Oh, well, I didn't look at it till today. I think we found the problem, you know, because if you can't see beyond the end of your nose or the end of the hood of your truck, and you don't calculate for today what's going to happen Thursday or Friday or the middle of next week, then you're going to get to one of those days and realize that something you did yesterday is going to come up and bite you in the ass 2 days from now. And so proper planning, that has to be, I think one of the drivers asked me one day, he said, well, when do I need to look at this stuff? And I said, every minute of every day. You know, you have to constantly be thinking about where you are and where you're going and where's the next load and when do you have to be there and when you have to deliver that one, because everything you do every minute of the day, something can upset that's going to come back and affect you 3 or 4 days from now. So our system of picking loads, there's a lot of hustle, and there's probably, honestly, there's more hustle involved in what we do than a lot of BCOs want to do. And that's fine. I'm not saying that our system is perfect, but it has to work for what we do, because we have to pay the driver well, and we also have to get paid. So we've got to run a lot of revenue through these trucks. But a regular average BCO could do things like we do them and just make a pile of money. You know, there's no reason whatsoever that a BCO, especially one with a paid for truck, can't make $160,000 a year net profit after saving for maintenance and paying their taxes and stuff. But it involves a lot of hustle. So detention, tolls, truck order not used. Hit truck order not used a little more specifically, just because a lot of people don't really know what to do with a truck order not used.
Well, I mean, assuming that you know what it is, I mean, once you start moving towards a load, if it cancels after you have made some effort to get there, you've spent time, spent money, moved the truck, and you find out after you've already started that process of going to that load, if it cancels that point in time, you're somewhat entitled to what's called a truck order not used, TONU. And so if an agent calls you and cancels a load while you're still on your current load, then no, you're not eligible for that. But if you've delivered and you're on your way, or especially if you've gotten to the shipper and the product's not ready, something like that. But even prior to that, even if you're empty and you've started your day, you know, you're 3 hours into your day and you find out, well, this load's not going to go, then, you know, we have or Landstar has a system for that, where they will, again, through the agent, will bill the customer for a truck order not used. Now, there's no set dollar for that. I've seen 150, I've seen 250. There's, you know, it's going to be not necessarily a standard rate. A lot of it depends on how much trouble you've gone through, you know, and how much time you spent. But the thing that you have to do, though, is you have to pull out one of those blank bills of lading that you got orientation, and you have to create a bill of lading for the truck order not used. And you got to submit that, you transflow it, or however you send your paperwork through on a normal load to Landstar for that truck order not used. And again, you'll be able to tell if it's been processed, because that freight bill number will still be alive. It won't come off of your settlement. It'll still be showing as an outstanding load on Landstar Online, also on your settlement. And that way, you know that that has been processed and the customer has been billed. Now, there again, you may watch that for 3 months and all of a sudden it goes away, and you call BCO settlements and you go, what happened? They say, well, let me transfer the billing. You get the bill and they go, well, the customer refused to pay for it. That's the end of the story. Okay. But you could watch it for 2 or 3 months, and all of a sudden on your settlements, you get a truck order not used for $150, $200, and you'd forgotten about it because it was 3 months ago, you know. because billing will stay with it until the customer refuses to pay for it or pays for it, one or the other. But there again, the process is you have to create the bill of lading, and you have to submit it with your paperwork, just like you deliver the load, with the trip, truck, and trailer number on it, and all that sort of stuff. And again, half the time you'll get it, half the time you won't. But if you don't do it, you'll never get it. So,
yeah, I think one of the the simplest ways to avoid a lot of confusion with when it comes to problem solving is to have some simple answers already in your mind. And a lot of that comes from reading the contract that you signed. Like, just be honest. There's a lot of people that don't read the contract. They just sign their name to it so somebody will give them what they need to go pull freight. But there's I see people asking a lot of questions online that could be answered if they just went and read the contract that they signed.
Or they're surprised. They're surprised because something turned out a way that they aren't in agreement with. And then they're surprised to find out that that's exactly what the contract said it was going to happen. But they didn't bother to read the contract, or they didn't understand it, or they didn't, but that at least is, I don't know, 20 pages, 25 pages, double-sided. So, I mean, look, people buy $150,000 trucks and don't read the contract, So, I mean, that's not anything that surprises you, but all the answers are there, you can, this stuff about the deductibles I was talking about earlier, that's in the lease contract. It's all spelled out there, exactly what happens, what you're responsible for if you damage freight or damage a trailer or whatever. It's all there. That's the authority that all this comes from. It's not somebody sitting at a desk and going, well, I think I'm going to charge this BCO this today, or whatever. That's this is where the rules come from, and this is where the rules are this is where the rules are published, and it's just up to you to read them. Or you can do like most people and just ask on Facebook, and then instead of getting the rules, you get 98 opinions about what the rules are. Then you still don't know the answer, but you've got everybody's opinion as to what it is.
Yeah, you might as well just walk up to the liar's counter at the truck stop.
What do y'all think about this? And if there's 98 people there, you'll get 99 answers as to what the right thing it should be.
Yeah, and probably none of them are correct.
And most of them are. Yeah. So.
Can you think of anything else?
No, I think we've probably covered it pretty well. I mean, problem solving is such a broad thing. We've tried to show specific things, occurrences that happen at Landstar on a fairly regular basis, and the approach to doing it. But any situation that you would qualify as a problem, the skills to resolve that problem are pretty generic or pretty universal. It's just take the emotion out of it, take the hurt out of it, do what you can to minimize the impact that it's going to have on you, especially in a business situation. Because, I mean, when you're talking business, we're talking money. I mean, that's what business is. So the whole point of problem solving in a business situation is minimize the impact it has on you financially. So that's really what we're trying to do. But until it's like having a wound, until you wipe the blood away and just deal with the gash, then you don't really know what you've got. And if you're dealing with in a problem solving situation and you let the emotions get involved, you haven't got the blood moved away yet. You haven't seen how bad the cut is because you're still pouting over the fact that, this happened to you, but remember, all we're trying to do here is get you to understand the impact it has on you financially. And the way you recover from it will be whether you minimize that or let it continually affect the rest of what you do in that week or whatever, but being decisive and again, decision making is having all of the options in front of you, and then look at drawing on your experience, drawing on your knowledge base, and understanding which one of these options is going to work best in this situation. So that's the process. There's no, two people could do it two different ways. Looking back at it, here's the real lesson from this, and that is, after you've made those decisions and you've resolved the problem, now look back and go, okay, would I do it the same way the next time? Or am I learning from this that I'll take with me to the next problem that I have to solve? So everybody makes mistakes, and everybody when you work for me, mistakes are it's not expected, but they're understandable. It's making the same mistake over and over again that we don't tolerate. Yeah. And learning is a process of making mistakes and learning from them. Problem solving is going to be the same way. A good problem solver is one who's learned from the mistakes he's made and making the wrong decisions on problems and understanding what that consequence was. And taking that information now he's a better problem solver now than he or she would have been, before. So that's the other side of this, is learn from you're not going to always make the right decision, but analyze that, look at it, learn from it, and take that with you and remember that when your situation again. Well, wait a minute, that didn't work last time. Maybe we shouldn't do it. We should do it a different way this time. So, but hopefully this will help you. If you got any questions specifically, we happy to answer them and address them in the future.
Yeah.
But as usual,
there's one thing that we never mentioned when it came to solving problems that we encounter in running a fleet. And that's going to the government and looking for an answer.
That's not problem solving.
Yeah. We camping out in Washington for 3 weeks. We're too busy working, to be able to take that much time off to go and to go up there. Well, if you have questions, Chris at blueribbonlogistics.com, Larry at blueribbonlogistics.com. We still are hiring drivers. Go to blueribbonlogistics.com and click on Drive for Us. Fill out the form there, and we'll give you a call, set you up for an interview, look at your experience. We're going to add some trucks this year. We had one plan in the beginning of January. We've had to modify that a little bit, but we still expect to put a couple more trucks on this year, so we'll need good drivers that have the attitude and the aptitude for self-employment, that want to come here and learn how to do this without risk and be able to make a good living while you're doing it. So go check that out. I've got this one live on our Facebook page, so we're going to try to do better about having these be live on Facebook and do a little more interactive content. So that's all for now. Until next time, we will see you later.
Everybody have a great weekend. Thanks.